blues might be considered part of jazz, but they are also a musical genre in their own right. As a folk tradition, they were sung before jazz emerged, and folk versions of the blues have continued to be sung as jazz has become America's popular music and classical music, and now just part of the mix. This video looks at three types of blues: the rural or country blues that began it all, the classic or city blues that made blues popular, and the electric or Chicago blues that would be so influential on rock and roll. The blues are about feelings, about a form, and about authentic expression. One sings about being blue, partly not to feel blue. We look to our blues singers to sound like they know what they're singing about. In our book, they are supposed to know how it feels to be dumped. They're supposed to know how it feels to lose one's home or one's family. As you already know, the blues, as a folk tradition, have been based on the blues scale. The blues scale, of course, okay, that blues scale, of course, has that prominent blues note, which is right there. And it also can be used over the top of that 12-bar progression. 4, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1. And then you have the 12-bar blues. Now, the earliest singers of the blues improvised their melodies from the blues scale, and then they generally accompanied themselves on the guitar using the blues harmonic progression. The earliest blues singers' melodies generally consisted of one musical phrase that was hooked up to a statement of the text that was repeated. The blues verses concluded with an answer statement in the text and in the music. Normally there's some rhyme involved. To improvise a less than inspired blues text for you, I might sing, "I woke up this morning so tired I thought I would die. I woke up this morning so tired I thought I would die. I just want to sit in the corner and cry." And that would be the first verse, and you noticed it was AAB, one musical phrase, one textual phrase. I woke up this morning so tired I thought I would die. I repeated it, and then I gave an answer phrase. Another verse would follow, something like, "I sat myself up and got out of bed. I sat myself up and got out of bed. Oh, what a pain I have in my head." So you see how it works. Now, call and response was also sometimes enacted. A blues singer might play a musical response on the guitar after each of his lines. And of course, when you had multiple people playing the blues, then maybe someone else would actually play an echo on the harmonica or perhaps the piano. As I think that my less than profound example of the blues illustrates, the textual and musical forms of the blues are simple. This makes them excellent folk music and also leaves a lot of room for inspired performances. The rural or country blues first emerged in the Mississippi Delta region. As simple songs, they were sung on back porches, in trains, and in juke joints, such as the one you see on your screen. The juke joint was a really important part of African American culture in the first half of the 20th century. These were the clubs where African Americans would go to get together to sing, to dance, and to more generally enjoy life. The simple accompaniment that typically underlied the melody line in the country or rural blues was often provided by the guitar, by the harmonica, and/or by the mouth harp. Blues players such as Blind Willie McTell were known for their 12-string guitars. Other blues singers, such as Robert Johnson, were known for slide techniques. Sometimes blues musicians performed these slides with the guitar held on the lap rather than held across the body in a caddy corner type fashion. When when the guitar is played on the lap, the guitar is often called a slide guitar or a lap guitar or sometimes even a Hawaiian guitar. Few Delta blues singers are more famous than Robert Johnson, who was born in Mississippi. As a youngster, Robert encountered the blues playing of Son House and Willie Brown. After learning the harmonica and jaw harp, he turned to the guitar. An itinerant musician, he found himself in San Antonio, Texas. It was there that he recorded Crossroads and several other tunes for the American Record Company in 1936. Known for his weakness for whiskey and women, Robert Johnson died in 1938. He was reportedly poisoned after rekindling an old flame with someone else's wife. Now, the song Crossroads ostensibly tells of the failed attempt to hitch a ride at a rural intersection. A more metaphorical reading might hear it as a cry of loneliness upon the failure to find a woman. The song has also been linked to the legend that Johnson met the devil at the crossroads one evening, selling his soul in exchange for the ability to play the guitar. There is no indication whatsoever that Johnson himself ever propagated such a story. As you listen to this tune, do notice Johnson's high-pitched and strained vocal delivery. You can also notice his distinctive guitar technique. There's a lot of finger picking here, as well as some bottleneck slides. Country blues sung across the Piedmont area of the Southeast were, appropriately, called the Piedmont Blues. One of the most distinctive blues singers in this area was Blind Willie McTell. Blind Willie McTell was raised near Statesboro, Georgia, and there's an annual blues festival in Statesboro every year in his honor. After learning the guitar, McTell became a street performer in Augusta and Atlanta, and he started recording for Victor Records in 1927. McTell was one of the most recorded bluesmen of his day, although he never produced a major hit. His Statesboro Blues from 1928 was covered by the Allman Brothers in 1971. Statesboro Blues tells of a woman who won't let a man into her house, of an abandoned child, and of an entire family who has been struck with the blues. In the Statesboro Blues, you can hear McTell's distinctive high-pitched vocals. You can also hear his mastery of the 12-string guitar. Make sure you study the more detailed analysis of this tune in the Blues Listening Guide on the course website. Blues first entered popular music as it was written out in musical notation and also as it was recorded for playback. Born in Florence, Alabama, W.C. Handy is sometimes called the father of the blues. He is called this because his publication of the sheet music for his Memphis Blues in 1912 marked the first time that a blues had been published. In 1920, Mamie Smith became the first person to record the city or classic blues. It is ironic that neither W.C. Handy's Memphis Blues from the previous screen, from 1912, or Mamie Smith's Crazy Blues actually used the 12-bar blues formula that we have discussed so much in the class. It's also a good reminder that terms such as the blues and jazz have been used in many different ways and were used in many different ways in the early 20th century. Sometimes they were used as much to evoke a sound and a mood as to evoke specific forms. We've already encountered Bessie Smith as we studied timbre, performing forces, and musical form. She is perhaps the most important blues singer of the 20th century. Born into abject poverty in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Bessie Smith followed her brother into an African-American traveling musical act. Starting as a dancer, she was discovered by the lead singer of the troupe, Ma Rainey. Ma Rainey incidentally grew up in Columbus, Georgia. After establishing her own act at Atlanta's 81 Theater, which is kind of where Georgia State is today, Bessie Smith's reputation grew. In 1923, she signed a contract with Columbia Records. Notwithstanding the sizable amounts of money that Bessie Smith made over her lifetime, she had a hard life. She found herself in difficult relationships often and also struggled with addiction for much of her life. It's really unfortunate that about the time when she had regained a personal equilibrium and had cleaned herself up, she was killed in a car accident on the way to a singing engagement. Long before her death, Bessie Smith became one of the most famous interpreters of W.C. Handy's blues, the St. Louis Blues. Smith first recorded this in 1925, backed up by harmonium and cornet, and the harmonium is simply an organ. The cornet was played by no less a musician than Louis Armstrong. Please study this in your study guides before you study the final blues example that we will talk about. 4 years after it was recorded by Bessie Smith, the song St. Louis Blues lent its name to a plot and title to a film, a short 16-minute film. In the film St. Louis Blues, Bessie Smith played a woman who discovers her husband cheating on her. After her husband storms out, the character played by Smith sings verses from Handy's St. Louis Blues. She finds herself in a bar where a jazz band accompanies her and the rest of the customers provide backup vocals. As you watch footage of this film from YouTube, do think about how the song shapes the plot of the short film. Also, please ask yourself what is different about the 1929 version of the song, which you'll hear as part of the short film soundtrack, and the 1925 version, which you listen to in the listening guide. The Chicago or electric blues emerged in the 1950s. As the name electric blues implies, these were blues that took the Mississippi Delta rural blues and added electric guitars and mic'd vocals. Many of the best recordings of these 1950s blues came out of Chess Records, a company that was run by brothers Leonard and Phil Chess. If you like movies, you might check out the 2008 musical biopic Cadillac Records that centers on the operations of Chess Records and on the musicians it worked with, such as Muddy Waters, Willie Dixon, and Howlin' Wolf, as well as Etta James and Chuck Berry. Although certainly some fictional license was taken with the film, a great deal of the film recreates documented historical events. Born in Mississippi around 1913, McKinley Morganfield, better known as Muddy Waters, would become one of the greatest Chicago blues artists. In fact, it was his song, Rolling Stone, that gave the much later British band its name and that inspired its blues-based rock. Rolling Stone is Muddy Waters' version of the old Delta blues classic, Catfish Blues. As you study the listening guide for the tune, notice the guitar accompaniment. Notice also the freedom with which Waters sings these blues. The blues uses the traditional 1, 4, and 5 chords, just like any blues does. But note that when Waters is singing, he simply repeats the tonic or the 1 chord, so it's very simple in that way. Now, after you've studied Rolling Stone in the listening guide, feel free to proceed to the next video, Jazz during the 1920s.